In The Fall of the House of Usher, Price infused the character of Roderick Usher with his own sense of style and sophistication.
Roderick Usher was a very sensitive, very educated and sophisticated man of very delicate sensibilities. And I felt Vincent Price had those qualities, and he played the role wonderfully.
Madeline and I are like figures of fine glass. The slightest touch and we may shatter.
Any actor, the more depth there is to the person, the more depth there is to their performances.
Legendary sci-fi and fantasy author Richard Matheson wrote the script for this movie and 4 other Poe titles filmed by Roger Corman.
He was like a Renaissance man, and he brought that to his acting parts. And he always had a twinkle in his eye. So if there was anything questionable in a script that might be a bad laugh, he'd pick it out and make it a good laugh.
Price's background as a classically trained stage actor made him perfectly suited for the 1960s Corman horror films. That's because the pictures were essentially Baroque-style period pieces.
If only I could kill you myself.
Yes, if only you could.
Yes.
At the time, Hollywood was experiencing a growing rift between traditionally trained performers like Price and a new breed called method actors.
And then suddenly came Jimmy Dean and Marlon Brando and the mumblers and the vernacular kind of talking. And we disappeared into costume pictures. And if you wanted to stay alive in the business, you went along with it.
Mark Damon, who starred with Price in The Fall of the House of Usher, is now a successful movie executive. As a young method actor in the 60s, he remembers a time during the filming when the 2 schools of acting clashed on the set.
I was supposed to grab Vincent and throw him into a chair. And so what I did was I grabbed him and I threw him halfway across the room, and he got very upset, and he said, "You method actors," he said, "don't you know how to control yourself?" He said, "This is acting." He said, "It is not life."
That's the only time I ever saw him in all the years I knew him lose his temper.
Price soon calmed down, filming continued, and The Fall of the House of Usher went on to launch a new era of supernatural horror films. By the time The Fall of the House of Usher was released, Vincent Price was becoming a horror legend. But off-screen, his reputation as an author and lecturer on art was equally well known.
He was really the greatest art educator I've ever known. This really was his love. If acting had not been his vocation, I think teaching art would have been, and he would have been the greatest.
In the 1940s, Price's speaking engagements made him one of the most sought-after lecturers in the country, second only to First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt. But in the 60s, Price would actually work with the First Lady, Jacqueline Kennedy. He was the first actor ever appointed to the White House Commission on Arts. Following the success of Usher, the actor was back on the set for another Poe classic, 1961's Pit and the Pendulum.
Price had a field day in Pit and the Pendulum because it gave him a chance to play 2 disparate sides of the same persona.
Is it possible I am doing these things unaware? To punish myself?
No, Nicholas, no.
Price's character, Nicholas Medina, is slowly driven insane by his best friend and by his own scheming wife, a woman Nicholas believes he buried alive.
True. True. True.
In madness, he assumes the persona of his dead father, a sadistic torturer in the Spanish Inquisition.
Thus the condition of man, bound on an island from which he can never hope to escape.
From this point on in his career, Price could never escape the label of horror star. But looking back, the actor claimed he wouldn't have wanted to.
Boris and Karloff and Peter Lorre and Basil Rathbone and I used to sit around and say, how will we scare the little you know? What do we do now? And then we did it very seriously, you know, and then we had fun enjoying what we had done.
The Gothic 60s gave way to the groovy 70s, and as he had done for over 30 years, Vincent Price adapted to new times and new challenges.
The key to Vincent Price's success as an actor was that he really understood the need to remain contemporary. He always knew what the young people were looking for.
During the 70s, Gothic castles were replaced with psychedelic sets and far-out costumes. Louis Deke Hayward produced several of Price's films during this period, including 1971's cult classic, The Abominable Dr. Phibes.
We wanted to go in a different direction. The moment he knew what direction we wanted to go into, he came along with us.
You I will kill. But you can't, Doctor. I am already dead.
In Dr. Phibes, Price was again a good man turned bad, a doctor hell-bent on avenging the death of his wife. His face mangled in an accident, Phibes was forced to wear makeup and a mask, theatrical devices Price relished.
He'd like to be faced with this lovely girl who carried a tray of body parts. And he liked to be able to pick out his ear and paste on his ear.
He will have a face like mine.
In 1973, Vincent Price made what many consider to be his best horror film, the wry black comedy Theater of Blood. Price played Edward Lionheart, an egocentric actor denied a coveted award who exacts deadly revenge on the critics who have snubbed him.
The scene where Hector, believing he was among friends, was brutally murdered by them without warning, and his body dragged from the battlefield tied to a horse's tail.
The end of the 70s brought a turning point in the actor's career. The multi-picture movie deals dwindled, but he never slowed down. Price continued to work in theater, in animated features, and promoting products. But in much of his work, his well-known macabre image followed him. Rather than fight it, Price opted to accept it and even revel in it, as in this guest appearance on the hit television dramatic series Night Gallery.
Mr. Evans, this is my father who built this house and who is back with us.
I never felt that just the great parts were the only things you should do. I think that's a real mistake because there's so many wonderful, interesting things to do.
Vincent Price even dabbled in one of his secret passions, rock music, providing narration for a song on Alice Cooper's smash album, Welcome to My Nightmare.
Such power and dignity, unhampered by sentiment.
I think that if Vincent Price would have been a rock and roller, he would have been doing exactly what I'm doing. When I worked with him on Welcome to My Nightmare, he fit right in.
In 1990, Price had a small but pivotal role in Tim Burton's fantasy film Edward Scissorhands. The part would be one of Price's final screen appearances.
Burton had been fascinated by Price's persona in the Edgar Allan Poe pictures, the haunted, driven characters that he played, and he wanted to pay tribute to Price with this picture.
On October 25th, 1993, Vincent Price died at age 82.
He was the nicest man I ever met in the business, and that remains true to this day.
Pure evil out of such a good, generous, and sweet man.
I think that half the fun of those pictures that I made was the fact that you screamed maybe, but then you giggled at yourself for being such a fool.
The ghosts are waiting, so won't you join me in the house on Haunted Hill? Hurry, or you'll be late for your own funeral.
Vincent Price's on-screen achievements will always be remembered. But today, his off-screen legacy survives in the most unlikely of places, an organization founded by Price that he called his most important work. In 1951, Vincent Price gave a lecture at a small community college in East Los Angeles. Struck by the students' insatiable curiosity, Price donated 90 pieces of art to create the Vincent Price Gallery at East Los Angeles College. Today, the collection holds 500 pieces and is valued at more than $5 million.
He took real pleasure in the fact that the gallery over the years and the art collection was able to influence so many thousands of students.
The times that he walked into the art department, into the classes, and actually spoke to the students and about their work itself, not just what we have up on the walls here.
One of the pieces on exhibit right now is a painting by the great Irish painter Patrick Graham, an artist that Vincent Price discovered in a trip to Ireland. Patrick Graham sent him this painting of Vincent's chariot to heaven when he was dying on his bed. And Vincent was so pleased and touched by this. It's really very moving.
Vincent Price was a Renaissance man who loved life with a passion. His desire to entertain, to frighten and be frightened was displayed in every role. In true Price-like fashion, he once joked that his epitaph should read, "I'll be back." But with such an incredible legacy of classic horror films, this master of fantasy never really left.